Man, we were getting every single frame of your camera there, but it's fine because we're into game number 1. And in the upper left, for Berserker Esports in the red, it's TeebuL.
My camera looks fantastic in my preview, mate.
Yeah, not sure what was happening.
In the bottom right side of Golden Aura, we are looking at the main base of another Chinese Protoss. This is Nanami. He went 0-1 after losing the PvP against Haas, but those games were played on the B stream. I know you were asking me earlier, like, did I manage to catch those? No, that was happening at the same time as I was casting some other video games together with VODs, so I did not manage to see those. There are so many games in this tournament, which I do think is fantastic for the players, because I always thought it was a bit sad in like the old days of the WCS Premier League, where you have guys that work so incredibly hard to make it into the premier competition of their region. And then you get a 4-man group, and then one of the players in your group is a top dog of the region, so you're pretty much guaranteed to start off 0-2. And then it all comes down to a single best of 3, which I always just thought was a little bit sad. So I like this format more because it really gives players a chance to perform at a bigger stage with people watching, have a realistic shot at making some money, and it not all being like the 4-man group dependent.
And on top of that, there are less series than the kind of the traditional, the round robin stage we've had last year. So
yeah, that was a bit later. I did like that one as well, but at one point after doing it for like 8 seasons in a row, I was like, okay, I think it is cool that we are switching it up and that we are trying a different format. And I feel that the Swiss format worked out really well at the summer regionals.
Yeah, I really like it because what it means here is TeebuL proxying something. We're gonna see exactly what it is. But it's nice in part because it means that every single series matters, right? You go to 2-0, that's your qualifying match. You 1-1, you 1 step towards qualifying, 1 step towards elimination. Whereas we'd have a round robin stage, and there we go, Stargate going down from TeebuL. You'd have a round robin stage, and
ooh,
oh, good catch there from Nanami. That's yeah, he can deny this pylon. So
yeah,
TeebuL, what's your next attempt? What's part B of this plan?
I almost say I think you should cancel it. I really think that you should cancel it, because yes, you can walk your stalkers to the other side of the map, but most likely this target is going to get unpowered, so then you need to bring your pro back, you need to repower that Stargate, and how likely is it that a repowered Stargate is going to find damage? Yeah, it's just not very likely. I think that's a good call, and you know what, it may not even be that bad, because now you can just expand. We're going to have a Stalker skirmish here, and Nanami needs to be careful because unit number 3 is about to show up for TeebuL, and that means TeebuL can win this fight. A little bit sad that TeebuL didn't even try to save that Stalker, because I kind of felt that he should have been able to save it. Now instead he's going to end up losing at least 1 more Stalker, if it's not 2. It is just 1 for now. Oh, TeebuL. I think that could have gone a little bit better for him. It is very difficult to micro units on this server with the amount of ping that he's working with. I still think there was a chance to save at least 1 unit there.
Yeah, 3 HP remaining on that last Stalker from Nanami as well. So TeebuL almost traded another 1-for-1, but not quite. And at this point, Nanami, he's just very interested. The Oracle dives on top of the Stalker as well. Now it's still 3 Stalkers to 3, so you gotta back up. You're not gonna win this fight, Nanami. But still, interesting idea, right? If TeebuL was not so active on his reinforcements, if he cut warp ins a little bit to try to find some greed, that's absolutely something that can snowball. Even still, Nanami now, this Oracle, it's pretty low. It's going to struggle to find maybe the damage that it might like to get eventually, but there's also a shield battery in the main base, Roddy. So even then, killing a Stalker with the Oracle is probably, with the first Oracle, is probably best case scenario, actually.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I love it, because now it's obviously so much harder for you to find economic damage. And if you make double Oracle, yeah, single Oracle, you can say, okay, that's just for control. I'm going to try to be annoying. I'm going to make sure that A, I have detection for a while, so I don't need a quick robo, and B, maybe I can drop some stasis traps. If you go double Oracle, you absolutely want to get a few probes here and there, and that is always possible as long as Blink is not online. But Blink is now going to finish up in the near future. I think this was one of these rare moments where I would have said it's better to not kill that Stalker, but just keep your Oracle healthy. I mean, you can make a few more Stalkers yourself, and then he could have tried to poke with Stalker and double Oracle in the natural, or poke with Stalkers and see how many units is TeebuL going to pull away from his main, and then make a dive with double Oracle, right? I think that would have netted him a little more success throughout the long run, but I guess the guaranteed damage is never a really bad choice. I don't know. It's still a big investment. Stargate, a double Oracle, and you get a single Stalker. I don't know if I'd be ultra happy with that.
I mean, that being said, Roddy, this was a canceled proxy Stargate. This was a positive Stalker trade from Nanami. He got his natural faster. So, yeah, you don't kill workers with this. You don't get that big economic damage that we were talking about. But Nanami is still ahead a couple workers. His economy is still doing fairly nicely for himself. He's got the third base on the way now. Not the end of the world. And look at how defensively he's playing with these oracles as well. He knows he's being a little greedy. So stasis traps all over the place. Any move out of TeebuL to try to punish this, it's not going to be the easiest thing. Again, you're going to blink in, you're going to find half your army frozen, and that's not a recipe for success, Roddy.
No, it's absolutely not the end of the world, and I did not mean that I didn't like the start overall. I think the start was good. I just meant the Oracle dive by itself, right? I feel like maybe we could have played it out a bit different, but in the grand scheme of things, I think Nanami should be perfectly happy with his opening. He's got a lot of things going for himself. Stalker count is slightly favoring TeebuL, but TeebuL knows as long as there are 2 oracles out, he needs to respect that. And he cannot just grab every single Stalker, bring it to the front lines. He knows about these oracles, by the way, because the Zelnaga Watchtower. TeebuL should be able to get the double kill here. Oh, yes, that is the double kill. And that's why, like, the longer you wait trying to find damage with your oracles, the less likely it is that they'll get damage at all. And this all goes back into losing that much HP on your first oracle just to kill a single Stalker. So, yeah, now in the end, we can see, like, all right, what did Nanami really get out of his Stargate and his double oracle? A single Stalker? I mean, that's not too hot.
No, the defensive stasis traps, clearly, and Vision, keeping, I guess, TeebuL back. But you're right, that not super effective. Although, Roddy, you talk about how the later the game goes, the less likely you are to get damage done with the oracles. Well, there is kind of the paradox of the oracles, right? Where the longer the game goes, the less likely you are to get damage with them, which means in some games, the more likely you are to get damage with them, because your opponent's going to be like, wait, he's not going to dive in with oracles. It's 10 minutes. I can move out on the map. It's fine. Not this game, of course, but, we do sometimes see something like that. But Nanami, big deal here. He is progressing his tech a lot faster than TeebuL. He's already got Immortals on the map. Charge is going to be a little bit faster. The one thing, though, his Forge was slower. He's not going to be able to hit that +1 timing when his opponent doesn't have anything. So even now, his Charge is done and Immortals are getting added in and this army continues to grow. I don't know that there's a massive push timing for Nanami necessarily. Again, Charge is going to be done for TeebuL roughly by the time he really starts to do anything.
I gotta say, nice scout with the hallucinated Phoenix, because he actually spotted the Dark Shrine in the back of the main base of TeebuL, and I was already looking. I was like, how many observers do we have, my friend? And he just had 1. It was in surveillance mode, chilling on the left side of all of his bases. And that could have been a problem. But after scouting that Dark Shrine, he made a 2nd observer. He got a couple of cannons as well. Those cannons are backed up by shield batteries. So TeebuL is not going to find any immediate success with his Dark Shrine. But the funny thing about a Dark Shrine, once you're on 3 bases, is that A, they're not very expensive. And B, apparently we're going for Shadow Stride as well. That can come into play later. But even when your opponent scouts the Dark Shrine, your Dark Shrine is already dealing damage, right? Because then they're going to build another observer. They're going to build a whole bunch of cannons that otherwise they probably wouldn't have been built. So it's not even that bad for TeebuL that it got scouted. But of course, you always hope for the dream scenario of a DT in the main, a DT in the natural, a DT in the third, and not a single observer is in place. That ain't going to happen, but it's still already accomplished something.
Yeah, certainly. The funny thing is, apparently, we can see +2s on the way, right? Popping up over things. We can see when Blink was on the way, you can see all those upgrades. And apparently, Shadow Stride just doesn't show up on Dark Shrines. The more you know. I don't think I ever noticed that, but it makes sense. It's invisible, Roddy. Invisible men, invisible upgrades. All the important things. But for now, Shadow Stride, very close to completion. +2 done here for TeebuL as well. Nanami doesn't have that yet. And at what point does this game start to break open? Is it the +2 timing? Is it this with these 4th bases going down? Is it a 5th? How exactly does this game start to crack open a little bit, Roddy?
I'm not totally sure, because I think it often depends on who is going to drop a 2nd robo, who wants to go into disrupt this. If one guy is going to tech up, the other one is not, then the one that's not teching up should be looking to find some damage somewhere, right? But if you're working with the exact same units, yeah, then you don't want to be the guy that's attacking into your opponent, because it's really hard to find into defender's advantage. Like this attack, for instance, without a War Prism, there's never really a whole lot that you can get done here. At least it shouldn't be possible. There is a War Prism on the way, and that War Prism is going to siege up in the back of the army, but it is a little bit late already, and these Zealots are finding a lot of surface area. Nanami, I mean, the supplies look okay, but I feel like he has lost a lot of expensive units here. He is going to get the reinforcements, but I don't know if that's going to be good enough. Why don't you wait a little bit then? We have DTs now blinking on top of cannons, by the way, on the other side of the map. But triple cannon and a battery is good enough for Nanami, so that part is good. But what a shame to lose all your immortals like that.
Yeah, that hurt a little bit. Again, it's Stalkers now versus Stalkers and Zealots, and Zealots are really good against the Stalkers. So TeebuL here down supply a little bit, but again, with those Zealots with the shield battery overcharge, should be okay, you'd think. But Nanami brings more Zealots in, except they're stuck behind the Stalkers. The wall of his own making is a bit of a problem. So with this concave on the high ground as well, TeebuL should be able to hold on. In fact, blinks forward. That's kind of ballsy there, TeebuL. I don't know how I feel about that one, but the DT defensively there. Roddy, there's no detection. This one Invisible Man, this one Dark Templar is doing so much, but the Zealots on the other side, well, they're getting a ton of damage too. So yeah, Nanami doesn't break the fourth base, but 7 workers going down. That's a little bit nicer.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. The defensive or the offensive blink rather was just not necessary by TeebuL. Maybe TeebuL got a bit overeager where he's like, oh, I've got a DT, I'm doing good over here, I'm gonna wipe the floor with this army, and maybe he was going to be all right if he wasn't forced to use his warpins in his natural. And because he was forced to use his warpins there because of the Zealot run by, Nanami was obviously able to reinforce once more with his War Prism, and that just turned an all right fight into kind of a bad fight for TeebuL. Because when he used that battery overcharge, he could have just stayed at range, could have just blinked back, should have really not have struggled all that much. At this point, it feels that this game is very close to ending. If you can just bring an observer over, there is an observer. We have an Archon in the mix, but there are so many units for our Chinese Protoss. Unfortunately for TeebuL, I think it's going to be hard to hang in there. He does have the upgrade advantage, but it's a numbers game, and +3 is nice, but a couple of Stalkers should not cut it against this many Zealots and Stalkers, and still one Big Daddy Immortal on the side of Nanami, who's going to blink forward, but this forward blink, I think is one that you support, and I can absolutely support as well. It should be over. I think this is the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, +3 is nice. 50 army supply, just a little bit nicer. So TeebuL's trying desperately to hold on. It's not gonna happen. Nanami takes game 1.
Yeah, shame, because I think that TeebuL was actually doing alrighty there for a split second. It's always a bit painful if you invest into Shadow Stride. You make 3 DTs, then you're fighting, and you know it's a close fight, but you're like, this is the moment, right, that my DTs can shine. Then you go into a base, you're like, oh god, he's got 3 cannons in the battery. So it's like, okay, that doesn't really work out. But I think once he had the battery overcharge, he was doing okay. You can just stay at range with that overcharge. You can blink Stalkers back one by one. It's just the forward blink. Maybe he underestimated the amount of Zealots that Nanami had there. But if you blink forward, even if your opponent just has 4 or 5 Zealots, oh, these Zealots are going to have a field day with your Stalkers. And that was just a very painful moment for TeebuL.
Yeah, it did look promising, right? That bad attack from Nanami in the front lines with the Immortals all going down to the force fields. That's not a great attack. That's not what you're looking for if you are Nanami, but he found room and he got a bunch of probes. He forced things out, and then TeebuL, for whatever reason, thought he had the win, or he felt pressured in some way to go and blink on top of the Stalkers. But generally, you do something like that if you're trying to get a Warp Prism, for example, or, you know, knock out this key piece of tech that allows you to win the fight. Yeah. But the Warp Prism was even further back. Blinking on top of those Stalkers just meant that he couldn't blink away. And then what are you going to do?
I think what it was is that he just kind of thought, okay, I am winning this fight, and if I blink forward now, I will decisively win the fight. And I think he saw maybe 1 or 2 Zealots, and he's like, that's it. But it wasn't 1 or 2, it was like 6 or 7 Zealots. And then the damage starts adding up so damn quick. On top of that, TeebuL had to use his defensive weapons in the natural to deal with those 7 Zealots that got on top of a cannon very early on, so the cannon fell. And yeah, there is a DT, but the annoying thing about a DT defensively is that the DT is invisible, which normally is a good thing, but if the Zealots can see it, the Zealots are like, oh, whatever, let's just go ahead and kill a whole bunch of probes. So it's actually like you really always want to have at least a Zealot and a DT, because a single DT just cannot kill that many Zealots quick enough before you lose your entire mineral line. Yeah, there's a few things going wrong there for TeebuL in the heat of the moment. Obviously, PvP can be very stressful because it's a bit of a deceiving matchup, right? Where the first 3.5 minutes, you're ultra on edge. You're like, what is it? Am I getting all in? Who's all inning? What do I have to worry about? Because you know you can lose the game so quickly. And then the game can really slow down because nobody really wants to attack into a battery without a War Prism, without a way to reinforce on the other side of the map. So it slows down, and then all hell breaks loose. You're attacking with DTs. You have to deal with a Zealot run by. You have to use your battery overcharge. You want to blink forward. You're trying to micro your stalker. So you go from doing a whole lot to not a whole lot to doing everything at once. And it is just really hard to make all the correct calls in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, certainly. And maybe a little bit too stressed. I don't know. But Hecate is going to be our second map in this series. Has Hecate been the second map in every series we've seen today? Or is it only... That's been true at least in 2 of them. So.
Yeah, not in the Go-Go Joey one, I believe. Because we played LC... I mean, however you say it. Alkione is what you say.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Side Delta was the decider and the opening mob was Heartlet. But yeah, we've seen this map in a couple of them at least.
Just a couple. But here on the bottom left, in the red, he's down a game on Hecate. It's TeebuL.
Top right side, we are looking at the main base of our Chinese Protoss taking the 1-0 lead. Also, just like Oriana did, representing Mystery Gaming, it is Nanami.
How do you feel about the mystery logo, Roddy? I mean, the Eye of Horus there, the twirly triangle, the twirly pyramid thing, and it's fun.
I don't feel super strongly about it, but I do like the colors.
Okay, fair enough. Actually, you know what? It matches the colors of at least the map preview of Hecate. You get all that purple kind of on the outsides that doesn't show quite as strongly when we're in game because it's all in fog of war. But a purple logo. It's a purplish map. Clearly, Nanami 2-0.
And the lines in the main base as well, right?
Yeah.
Purple there too. Looks pretty.
Yeah. Honestly, I was talking with Cats about this yesterday, but the map makers have really leveled up their game in making maps pretty over the last couple map pools. I mean, we had one where everything was just gray, but now that we're here, it's like we get greens and purples and different palettes all over the place, and it makes me kind of happy.
I've been screaming for just a little bit of color on at least some of the maps. Like, I know StarCraft in space and whatnot, but when we had multiple map pools in a row where 5 out of 7 maps were just proper dark, I'm like, geez Louise, guys. Like, this game is already stressful. It's intense. If you play it multiple hours a day, it can be very frustrating. Can I at least lose in color, you know? This is too much. So I'm happy to see that we have gone away from everything being doom and gloom for a little bit, and at least a pretty map or two. I also really liked Waterfall a while ago. That was cute. Even though the map itself wasn't my favorite, but I like how bright it was.
My favorite thing about Waterfall was you'd see all the Zerg players at Katowice, like when it was very much a new map, they're talking about how, you know, this game's unwinnable. Terrans were saying it's the only good map for them. And then you kind of looked at the stats about it after we had the full multiple seasons on Waterfall and see what happens. And actually it was like 55-45 Zerg favored, which was crazy, right? Because that looked like it should have been a Terran map, but because of how hard to attack the third base was and some other things, it actually ended up being fairly good for Zerg, which was not expected.
Well, I think it's also perhaps fairly good for Zerg because some of the other maps were even worse. You know, that was definitely a map pool that stood out. You had Inside and Out, you had Moondens, you had Stargazers, and yeah, just a couple of these other maps perhaps turned out to be even better for Terran, but I don't think that a Zerg would really look at Waterfall and be like, yeah, we love it. It was kind of like, okay, well, a couple of these other maps are absolute vetoes, so we better get good at it. And like, stats obviously will tell you something, but it truly depends who's playing, right? Because if Serral is winning a bunch of games there against Roddy's Terran, that doesn't really mean that that the map is good for Zerg, right?
I think it does, actually, Roddy. I think that is...
No, it doesn't, mate.
If Roddy's Terran can't beat Serral, clearly the map's just broken for Zerg.
I think that my Terran would struggle with you, Bio.
Well, that's a low bar right there. But anyways, Adepts into the main base. But there are too many Stalkers for now. It's not going to get too much done. But does this Oracle get anything? It's been scouted by the hallucination, so shouldn't get much. Hey, it gets one. And actually, with the stasis... Now, we get a sentry, though. Well, the Adepts are, at least. Even as the Oracle goes down, they don't even get the sentry.
Oh, and one of the Adepts falls as well. Oh, poor TeebuL. Bit of a train wreck of a start for TeebuL. Now, we do have the classic, the one Oracle that kind of got donated into the super quick Dark Shrine. You'll see this one on the ladder every now and then. What I like about this for TeebuL is that now we're kind of trying to win on strategy, right? We are just going for something that doesn't necessarily require the best execution. Now, of course, you want to keep the Oracle alive because you don't want to make it too easy for Nanami to figure it out. But TeebuL at this point maybe feels winning with the ping that he's working with today is just not going to do it. Nanami is perhaps a bit too good for that. So he's instead trying to win the game on strategy. And that was a train wreck of a start, like losing the Oracle that quickly, losing an Adept, losing your Rico ability. I honestly think you don't even want to send a DT in the natural and a DT in the main. I think you want to warp in like 3 DTs, close your eyes, and pray that the Robo is either late or is powered by a single pylon, and you just go for the pylon or the Robo. Like the Adepts, maybe, did they reveal it earlier? No, they haven't yet.
No,
I think you just want to grab all your DTs and pray.
That's fair. Yeah, when the Adepts warped in the first, or shaded in the first time, the Robo hadn't been started yet, so they weren't gonna see anything. But now here come the DTs. There's an observer on the way. We have a 5-second, we have like a 3-second window, Roddy, to do everything you could possibly want. The DTs, they're splitting up right now, and already there's a wall. Already they're dead. Nice try there, TeebuL. Even the strategy is not going to work out. Observer? Okay, we're good.
Painful. Okay, the DT somehow still lives. Nanami actually losing track of it for a split second. Dark Templar is going to hide. I think Nanami completely lost track of it. So this DT now has some potential to at least find a few probes. And what TeebuL did do is doing a great job in being on top of his probe production throughout the entirety of this game. So while a lot of the fights and a lot of the harassment attempts didn't go very well, he was economically ahead. He's now even further ahead economically. But can we deal with all these Blink Stalkers that Nanami is going to send to the other side of the map? Perhaps. I mean, there is definitely a chance, especially with a battery or two defensively, but you don't want to lose your third base, though.
It's insane that a 5 HP DT that just one more shot would have killed it gets 6 probes and forces Nanami back like that, but sometimes you're a little bit sloppy. That being said, here comes the pressure from Nanami onto the other side. But Roddy, you talked about it. Shield Battery Overcharge, Guardian Shield, both powerful things, and now Guardian Shield lasts longer. It's 14 seconds. It's not 12. That's a little bit more power per energy of the Sentry, so it makes this hold maybe a little bit easier. But for now, one Stalker gets knocked down. Down 12 army supply. That's the big deal for TeebuL right now as the Stalkers continue to blink. The Zealots run forward, but the Guardian Shield just means things aren't dying right now. These Stalkers of Nanami are not breaking TeebuL. And on the other side, there's an Adept in there. It's not doing much, but it is distracting Nanami just a little bit. You know, I mean, probes are going to get pulled preemptively here, I guess, but even without that, I don't think Nanami breaks this.
No, Nanami definitely wouldn't have broken it, but I think TeebuL at this point was worried about Nanami just turning around, going for the third base, and TeebuL had the superior concave there, but if he was forced to run into Nanami, maybe Nanami would have been able to get in a better spot. But of course, the biggest missed opportunity of all of this, BO, was the fact that Nanami attacked in the natural in the first place, right? Double battery overcharge, Stalkers in a perfect defensive spot, while meanwhile, if he would have just taken a tiny look towards the left, there was a Nexus there and a pylon with absolutely nothing defending it. So, massive missed opportunity for Nanami, where I think either thought he's ultra far ahead or just assumed that his opponent was still on 2 bases. But yeah, now we really have not just a game, we have a game where TeebuL, despite everything that had gone wrong in the beginning of the game, has taken the lead.
Now, Roddy, here's the question. Now, we talk about TeebuL. He has the lead again, despite that early game probably not going nearly as well as he would have liked. But are we talking miles ahead? Are we talking furlongs, parsecs, fathoms, if you want to go deep? How far ahead? Like, what order of magnitude is TeebuL ahead here?
Meters.
Meters. Okay, so tiny bit.
Yeah. No, he's in a good spot. He's got stuff going for himself, especially if Nanami is just really set on trying to end this game, where it's like, you're not going to end this game, I think, when the numbers are this close, unless you somehow really out-micro your opponent. He does have a little advantage in charge versus no charge, but that doesn't even matter all that much. If the slow Zealots are able to fight, they're dealing the same amount of damage. There's no more impact bonus. I don't love this fight for Nanami either, because he's not going to win the fight against the cannon, the battery, and the DTs defensively. And now his Stalkers are going to get absolutely obliterated. So I'm starting to feel that meters is going to turn into kilometers and eventually into a mile as well. well, because this attack just wasn't it. He split off way too many units to fight a cannon and a battery, and he wasn't going to win the fight with Stalkers only.
Yeah, absolutely not. Defensive DT as well, just adding in that much more damage. And yeah, there's an observer. Nanami has detection, so it wasn't going to win the fight. But, I mean, DTs, they just do a ton of damage. You add one in there, it adds a lot. And now Nanami sitting back at home. He's going to have to deal with this Dark Templar that runs into the main base, and he doesn't have vision yet either. So, pressure at the front, pressure in the main. TeebuL, he's seconds away here from just taking us on to game number 3. But for now, pressure comes. Zealots charge in. Nanami desperately trying to hold on, but even as that happens, the DT is shredding his main base. So economic damage, whichever way you want to slice it here. Zealots warping on the backside, but more Stalkers here from TeebuL finding their way in once again. That being said, defender's advantage working out really nicely for Nanami, and he will hold on.
We've been doing this for 13 years, but it is really hard to end the game in PvP if you don't have a way to reinforce your army. Like, you want to get either a Warp Prism or a pylon. We have, of course, a pylon and the gateway set up in the top left side, but that's pretty far away. So if you run into the third base of your opponent, it's kind of hard to close it out. But I think TeebuL was able to get away with a tiny slip up there because he still found some economic damage. He's ahead in the upgrades, and now the numbers are going to seriously favor him as well. Forward blink again. Pretty obvious that TeebuL just wants to get this game over, and I think he will succeed.
Well, hold on now. The shield battery overcharge is keeping the observer alive, Roddy. It's the most important. Actually, it is kind of important, but anyways, everything else, yeah, it's just not going well for Nanami right now. He's holding on desperately, like he's maintaining his supply in some way, but the longer this goes on, the more Stalkers survive for TeebuL, the less survive for Nanami, and eventually this will snowball into the other side of things to the point where there is nothing that Nanami will be able to do, and it feels like we've hit that point right now. The Stalker count from TeebuL is just so much bigger, up 20 supply. Nanami's holding on because this is the 0-1 match. You don't want to go to game 3. You want to make sure you get the 2-0 if you can, but Roddy, I don't see a world.
I don't think Nanami sees a world either. I think he knows, and GG gets skulled. TeebuL ties things up. Pretty funny, because not very often are you going to see a game where your opponent is like, all right, I'm going to start off with a Stargate. I'm going to make one Oracle. But the Oracle is kind of like, not a fake Oracle, obviously, because it's a real investment. But the Oracle is kind of there to distract your opponent from the fact that you're going for a very quick Dark Shrine. So what happens? Oracle flies in and it dies for a single probe, or maybe max 2, but definitely not a whole lot. Adepts the shade in, try to kill a sentry. Sentry gets healed by a battery. You try to recall the adepts. One of them dies. And then the icing on the cake is that you warp in 2 DTs and they show up a second before the observer pops out of the robo and your first DT does nothing. That's like, okay, that's game over, right? Well, very often it is. But you mentioned it, that one DT that survived with basically one Stalker hit. Nanami kind of lost track of it. Then it showed up. It kills 6 probes. I think Nanami made a big error not going for the third base, instead trying to end it. And I do understand kind of why, because you're like, hey, my opponent made an Oracle that died, made DTs that didn't do that much, and also lost the Adepts early on. Like, I can just run into his natural and kill him, right? I should have way more. Well, that wasn't the case. And from that point on, basically, everything went down south for the Chinese Protoss.
Yeah, man, you get that DT. It's such a different story. But now we move on to Solaris for game number 3. And Roddy, I don't know, Solaris makes me happy, mainly because I grew up a MechWarrior fan. I don't know if you ever played those games, but in that universe, there's a planet, this gladiatorial planet where they have these big mech battles, not for war, but for entertainment. And that's called Solaris 7. That was the planet where you would go, you have these battles, and there's all this novels around it by Michael Stackpole and others. And now we have our own Solaris gladiatorial arena in this PvP, and we're going to see, Roddy, who has the better mech, because Protoss units are mechanical units, something like that. Game 3, here.
What about the Zealots, though?
They don't count.
All right, let's hope we get no Zealots then. In the top right side, we are looking at the main base of the man who was on pole position to bring this best of 3 home 2-0. If he would have just taken out the third base that was completely exposed, wide open, there was nothing defending it. Instead, he tried to end it in the natural, and unfortunately that did not work out for him. Mystery Gaming's Nanami.
And in the bottom left, in the red, looking to complete what I would probably consider an upset. His name, TeebuL. And yeah, you know, Roddy, I've never thought about it like that, but technically, Protoss is a race of mechs, right? You got Stalkers, which are kind of, you know, I mean, those are mechs by definition. They are dead one of the Protoss factions that have kind of been repurposed. Immortals are like that, and the rest of them, a bunch of other units are robots. And even then, you know, we talked about the Mech Warrior universe. They still have infantry and power suits, and that's exactly what Zealots are. So there is zero difference now. We figured it out. There's zero difference between Protoss and the Mech Warrior universe. You got it.
So you're telling me I have to get into the Mech Warrior universe after playing Protoss for 13 years?
Exactly.
Okay. Is this going to cost me a lot of money? Do I have to collect cards again, or have to just buy little statues?
I mean, there's a tabletop game that something like I'm sure that, you know, Kalaris would enjoy, but a lot of people got into it in the video games, and you know, that's not nearly as expensive as buying a bunch of trading cards and opening them on the show floor in Vegas.
Oh no, those were free, mate. That was a service I provided.
There we go. Look at how good I am at opening packs of cards.
Absolutely, the passion was real.
Oh, of course.
We've got a double Stalker on the side of Nanami. TeebuL is once more going to open up a double Adept. It's very hard. Like, we can't be too critical of a player like TeebuL when he opens up with Adepts and he lets his Shade finish up, and he didn't really mean to, because he is playing with a crazy amount of thing on this server. So if you're trying to cancel them at the last second, then of course you always want to let that Shade go on, because A, you want to scare your opponent, and B, you want to see how much info you can find while sending those Shades forward. But yeah, with the game of ping, you're playing a very dangerous game, because while you're just scouting, then you're like, cancel, and then the Shade finishes up, and you're like, oh my god, I didn't want that at all. So it is very tricky for TeebuL, but hopefully he's used to it, and hopefully he knows what he's getting himself into.
Yeah, we'll see. Also, we talk about this map as we get into it. I'm a big fan of these speed zones, right? Because they're weird. We're used to seeing speed zones and slow zones, and they're all in the middle, right? That you can kind of run through the entirety of them. But this kind of just speeds you up around the corners, and it leads to some awkward fights. You don't generally, running around a corner is a scary thing. It doesn't work particularly well. You kind of run in single fire. The fights aren't great, but these speed zones do make a bit of a difference. As TeebuL, he's proxying once again. Roddy, this looks like a Stargate to me. That what we're gonna see here? Is there some weird robo play that he's got? And actually,
no, I don't think it. I think it's a gateway or a dark shrine. It's too late for Stargates because we have already expanded. A Stargate now would be crazy. Like, that's legit something that I would honestly say I have never seen before on this level. Of course, in lower levels, everything has been done. But a Stargate would be absolutely nuts. It should just be a gateway, or it's a dark shrine.
Yeah, no, that makes more sense. I was looking at it from positioning and not based on how far we were into the game. But yeah, dark shrine goes down, and it kind of worked in game one, technically. I mean, it wasn't what ended the game, but it did kind of work. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
In game two, you mean?
Yes, game two, sorry.
Yeah, but that one was a little bit different. Let's see if Nanami, because what's very interesting now is that he has an Oracle, right? That's going to fly into the main base. It is very important for TeebuL that he shows as many basic things as possible. But what he actually shows now is just like 4 units. Okay, Stalker number 5. If I was Nanami here, I wouldn't necessarily think, hey, something is missing, right? Because you see probes, you see Stalkers, sentries, all of these things cost gas. So my alarm bells, if I was Nanami, wouldn't necessarily go off, but with that Stalker on the right side, now it's safe to say that all the alarm bells are going off. And maybe he already felt like, wait a minute, you have 1 or 2 units less than I expect you to have. And he's gonna get on top of this Dark Shrine immediately. I think TeebuL should just cancel it, in all honesty. I wouldn't try to save it. I wouldn't try to still get value out of it. I would just cancel it.
Yeah, and that's gonna get canceled. And this also makes sense. Nanami, TeebuL's proxied every single game in the series, so Nanami, you would think he would be expecting the proxy regardless, just because that's what TeebuL's been doing every single time in this series. It was a Stargate, it was a Dark Shrine, I think those were kind of the 2 other proxies, so be on the lookout for it, scout around, and now TeebuL, plan B. Probably actually this is plan C at this point, considering how far along that Dark Shrine was, and where do you go here if you're TeebuL? You got +1 on the way, Blink getting started here, playing a more standard game, I guess, but that's hard to do if half your mineral line can't mine. A little hard.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent stasis there for Nanami. He's going to be happy with it. I think we're kind of going to have that same phase as we had on Golden Aura, where, okay, craziness early game PvP, TeebuL is hunting for that Oracle, by the way, but without Blink, it's really difficult to kill it. Even if you see it, then your opponent is going to see units come in as well. I also think we're just going to macro for a little while. We're going to build Stalkers, eventually some Zealots. You don't necessarily have to rush into Zealots if you're not planning to be aggressive. There's truly no need to make too many Zealots early on. You can just kind of defend with Stalkers. And then the big question is one of them going to try to rush into a whole bunch of Robo units? Will one of them drop an early Templar Archives or a Dark Shrine to attack with Zealot Stalker Archon? But I think there's a good chance that we're going to get up to 4 bases fully saturated before any real big fights will take place. Because it should be whoever attacks is going to be in a disadvantage. Yeah, with 6 gateways. Okay, now 7 gateways. Maybe Nanami is going to try with just 8 gate 3 base, but it's not needed. And if it's not needed, I don't think necessarily you should be attacking.
I mean, Nanami is one of these players that has proven over the last, well, 2 other games that we've cast of him today that he, given the option between getting a 4th base and teching up and doing more or attacking, he's going to choose the attacking pattern. He doesn't want these games. He doesn't follow the mantra of went ahead, get more head. It's went ahead, just go kill him. And sometimes that doesn't work. Defender's advantage, especially in PvP with shield batteries and the Robotech units being as important as they are, Defender's advantage can be a really strong thing. So for now, Nanami, he's got those gateways. +1's going to be done soon. Charge is going to be done soon. He's adding that Templar Archives you talked about, so he's going to have Archons as well. His tech is rounding out. It's all going to be done right around that same time. So there's a world where he does make this push happen. And I mean, for now, Roddy, he's up 20 army supply. Yes, that can change with Warpin. But for the moment, his army supply is looking pretty nice.
Yeah, I'm okay with the when ahead gets further ahead if it's very hard to close games out. But I just don't really think that Nanami is ahead. So when ahead, go kill him. It's gonna be hard. It's never impossible, because of course you can maybe find your opponent out of position. You can actually somehow find the one weakness and you get in a superior spot, or you just out micro him. All of these things are possible. But I don't think enough has happened in this game to say Nanami is ahead. Like, yeah, he canceled the Dark Shrine, but that's not exactly the biggest victory ever. He is gonna try to make magic happen here. There is a cannon, there is a battery. I think TeebuL should be fine, even if his army is a tiny bit smaller. It's 8 gates against 8 gates as well. If this fight goes on long enough, TeebuL is actually going to get his hands on +2. I feel like TeebuL should be okay, but obviously it is difficult to play on the Singaporean server. But he's got cannons and batteries everywhere. Every second that goes by should favor TeebuL.
That was such an awkward fight up the ramp as well. The force field was really, really nice. And this concave that TeebuL's getting ready for, 12 seconds, 10 seconds until +2. You're right, Roddy. That's what he's looking for. Stalkers blink forth. They don't get the Observer. They get damage on the Archon, and Nanami, he's just going to back up. Understands that this is not where he wants to be, and that is by far the correct decision. Don't fight into the defensive Protoss like that, into the concave, into the cannons, the shield batteries, the +2 timing, charge being done. Really would not have worked out for him all that well. So Nanami backs up. He's got his 4th base on the way. Moving on, tacking up. Game goes on.
What I do like is that that's just a very mature decision. Because he wanted to attack, he invested in the gateways a little bit earlier, then he realized, okay, the 3rd base is difficult because the cannon and the battery there. Natural, also very difficult. And then I think the one last thing he was maybe hoping for is that he was the one with Archons. His opponent wouldn't have Archons. And you can't really make that many Zealots if your opponent has Archons and you don't have any Archons yourself. So then he's like, okay, maybe I can force my opponent to make nothing but Stalkers and I can get a great fight with the Immortals. That wasn't the case either, because TeebuL got into Archons pretty quick himself. So I love the decision of Nanami to just go back, but he's a bit out of position now. At least he's got one Archon leading the charge to break these force fields, and that was absolutely needed. Otherwise, that would have been very problematic. How long is TeebuL going to stick around it? Because I just don't see a War Prism, a Pylon, or a Gateway, and you don't win these fights, BO. Kind of feel like I'm a broken record over here, but how do you end a game that is this close without a way to reinforce your attack?
You don't actually, Roddy. And you know what the one thing we're learning out of this game? You just don't attack. Sit at home, defend, get to your next round attack. Don't move on to the other side. It's death. It's disaster. Nanami, well, he proves just that to TeebuL right now. Now we're at 40 army supply. Shield battery overcharge gets blinked on, dies immediately. And there are more Zealots on the way. We got Immortals here as well. Archons firing. This is... Not only is this a hard fight for TeebuL, I don't see a world where he wins it at this point. The supplies are so overwhelming. +3's done soon, but Roddy, That's not gonna matter. More and more Zealots are gonna arrive. TeebuL forced to tap out.